Hi, Anna. How are you doing?
I'm going well. How are you going?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. Thank you. So good to have you here on my show again. So what we gonna hear and watch today? Tell me.
Yeah. Cool. I'm gonna play a song called "Ain't No Devil in Me." It's about sort of mental health. Every person has a level of physical health as they do mental health. And some people's mental health issues are to do with their upbringing. And you can't just pat them on the back and tell them you'll be okay. And there's nothing wrong with them. It was the way they were brought up. So that's what this song's about.
Okay. Okay. Sounds interesting. So whenever you're ready, please.
Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day.
Kiana, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm glad to see you here, and thank you very much for being here on my show. We eventually made it after a few months. So I've got a lot of questions for you here. So before I'm gonna start, say hi to those who are watching us now and later.
Absolutely. Well, hello everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and yeah, just so excited to get to chat with you finally. This has been a long time in the making, so this is
Yes, exactly. When I was talking to you last night, I thought you were Persian, and when I mentioned that I'm going to have a conversation with you, lots of people say that why she did choose the June for her family name. I said, well, she is not Persian. That's very constant. That's
I know. June, it is a family name though. The June was my grandmother's name. None of this really matters, but it comes from her. And yeah, my first name is just, my parents loved it and thought it was the most beautiful thing. So that's why I have it.
That's perfect. So I talk to different musicians, on my show, and I have had a few women actually, violinists on my show. As soon as I came across your page, the first thing that caught my attention was the joy and happiness through your facial expression and body language that I can see in every single of your posts while you're playing the violin. And I think this is one of the most important elements of success for any musician. Because you're welcoming people to watch your performance. Tell me about that.
Well, that's a huge compliment. So thank you for saying that. I completely agree with you. I think the visual element of your performance as a musician is often very underplayed, but it's really important. Just like you said, this is how you welcome people into the music that you're doing. And just as you would know, when you're acting or performing in any way, your body language, your facial expression is so important. And I think that really draws people into what you're playing and also kind of helps them know how to react, helps express not just what the music is saying in the way that you're playing it, but also in your body language. So thank you for noticing that. That's very sweet of you.
I've studied a lot about you. You're welcome. So I want to take you back 2 years ago when you had no idea of violin. I know you started by piano, but what I want to know is what happened then you became like so interested in violin. Tell me, talk to me.
So I originally started on piano, like you said. I think I was 5 or 6 at the time, little kid, and I was enjoying playing piano. I loved music from the get-go. Always was, banging on pots and pans as a kid. Just loved music of any kind. And then I had a friend who was starting a violin program at our school. And I kind of went along one day and just got to hear it and see what was going on. And I thought, this is the thing I want to do. This is the best thing ever. I've got to do that. And I told my parents about it and begged and begged and begged. And their answer was a very professional parent answer of, yes, but you need to practice piano for another year before you can switch. So I had to put in the time to prove that I really wanted it. And yeah, that's how it happened.
Okay. How old were you when you started doing violin?
7.
7. Wow. One thing I really saw and was looking for was the collaboration of several women violinists to release an album together. For example, each one of these musicians can be from a different country. Why did this never happen?
I don't know, but that's a brilliant idea. We should do that. That would be a really wonderful idea, and I think that's just a killer concept. I don't know why it hasn't happened. I think maybe a couple reasons would include the fact that we often get sort of stuck in our own music in each place that we're doing it, and there hasn't been until now. I think the internet is really helping us reach out and find musicians all over the world. And despite these very uncertain times and all of the difficulties that coronavirus has brought, that has been my one saving grace, that I've actually reached out online to so many more people and connected with violinists particularly female violinists from around the world, and learning how they're coping with it, but also musically just starting to engage. So I think that could be a really lovely idea. Yeah.
Well,
we should do it.
start.
Hey, we're gonna do that.
This is something that crossed my mind. I was Googling, I was YouTubing, and I couldn't find anything. It was like, what's going on? Why? Probably I didn't have no search, but I did. And I asked my friends, and they couldn't find anything. Well, back to you. In 2007, you formed your own acoustic trio called the Daughters of Newgrass.
Yeah.
First of all, tell me where that name comes from, and talk to me about this trio, please.
So, Newgrass is this kind of concept in American fiddling that takes a lot of old folk elements, like old-time fiddle, as we call it, and bluegrass as well, as you can get from the name, and combines that with some classical technique. And the kind of grandfathers of this tradition would be people like Daryl Anger, who kind of put together, these amazing folk ensembles that really highlighted fiddle music of the sort of American tradition, and taking in other elements as well, but also using more classical technique. And this was a huge inspiration for me growing up, getting started, and something that really drew me to fiddle music in general, just this kind of crossover style. And so I started this trio with two other very talented women, a violist and a cellist that I knew from university. And that was kind of the start of my touring professional life.
Okay, and all right, yeah, that's, where can you find it? Is that on YouTube? Is that on Spotify and iTunes? Where? Gosh,
that is so long ago. It is like, those were like MySpace days. But I'm sure there are some YouTube recordings up there somewhere. We did have an EP, which I'm not sure is on iTunes anymore, but it is out there on the internet somewhere, for sure.
Okay, so, and you have collaborated with many bands, music bands, both famous and professional, and also non-famous musicians. But it's been for years that you've been performing solo, and apparently you're much more successful because everything is in your hands. I'd like to talk to me about the challenges when you work with a band or with different bands, and when now you're working by yourself or just doing perform solo.
Yeah, that's a great question. Something that I've really been thinking about during this time as well, because obviously so much of your time as an artist is often collaborating, working with other people, feeding creatively, and we can't do that at all right now. Everyone's sort of cocooned in their own little world, and that's really tough. But yeah, there's so obviously challenges to both. Working with a band, you get so much energy from all the other people and what they bring to the table, and everyone has their own skills, which is great. But the challenge is really in bringing those together. I always think that bands are sort of a funny study in human resources and psychology all the time. There's so many different competing interests, and trying to figure out how they all fit together and how to bring out the best in everyone, which you see in the history of band life doesn't happen very often. Even the most successful bands don't usually make it past 10 years.
Yeah.
It's just very hard.
And what's the challenges when you're doing, since you left, like you're just been doing on your own? And
so that is lovely because you have all the creative control yourself, and there's a lot of great things that come from that, but challenging because of that. In the same way, how they say your greatest strengths often become your greatest weaknesses, that having that control can also be really paralyzing and really overwhelming. And it's also very lonely. It's really hard when you don't have that influence from other people to bounce off of all the time. So I would, for all the artists that are watching this right now and working on their own solo projects, I think connecting with other artists, even just socially, is so important to bounce ideas, share what you're working on, just to get that sort of new perspective and kind of energy into what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Because you have to manage all your tours, you have to manage everything. Well, not everything is like stopped because data.
Yeah, no tours to manage right now, but yeah, and I think that is really hard. It's also particularly brings up a point for everyone, you know, starting their own business, of recognizing your own skills and things you can do and things you can't. You know, when to outsource something. And I have loads of really successful friends in the business who just know, okay, I'm not great at photo editing. I'm going to outsource that. I'm going to get someone else to do all of that. And that's great. Your time is better spent making music than doing that. I happen to like photo editing and doing some of those creative things, but then there's obviously things I don't like as well. And I think, you know, finding other people that you can outsource some things to, as well as having that kind of attitude of upskilling and, yeah, I can learn to do these things and spend my time on that, and that's important.
Right, and I've noticed that you go, you also teach, am I right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that, because just when you go live, and you're so patient, because I jumped and I watched some of your lessons that you were just talking to people, and I love that. I love your attitude, it's very friendly, and I think your students are really lucky to have you as their mentor. What is the first things that you usually mention to your to the beginner or to those who are interested to learn? Not particularly about violin, about music. What do you usually tell them?
I end up working with a lot of people, particularly that have classical training and are trying to transition into more folk music or rock or pop skills. So a lot of the first things that we work on is switching the way you listen from that classical mindset to the kind of like pop, rock, folk, roots music mindset. And there's some really basic things that everybody can do in their own home, whether, you know, whatever your training is. In classical music, we usually think of accenting the 1 and the 4 of a beat. And this is like the classic vision of, you go to a rock concert and then there's some people that want to clap on the 1 and the 4, or sorry, the 1 and the 3. But usually in really great fiddle music and really great pop and really great R&B, you want to accent the opposite beats. So just kind of switching that mindset is a lot of the first things that I work on with musicians of any level, even beginners. I think it's great to sort of switch your ears and try to figure out how to hear with that kind of more, I don't know, the mindset of the music you want to dance to. Because so much folk music is made for social events, made for dancing, celebration. So getting into that. Yeah, and we spend a lot of time listening to stuff, just getting your ears turned on, because I think that's the best way to really rapidly change the way that you play.
Right. Okay, so one of the things that I had, that has been seen a lot over the last few months with the start of a pandemic, is the presence of artists, especially musicians, on the different social platforms. We have awesome and creative musicians in the world who are very unique, or who are unique and literate and creative, but are really seen. Besides, we have lots of bad musicians in these social platforms also, but they are seen a lot. Why do you think people are seeing them more than who are quite unique and individual? Is that because people don't usually adjust themselves to something new? Or I want to hear about your perspective.
Can you clarify that question for me? You mean that you feel like there's a lot of low quality content people are seeing?
And they've been seen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And being supported by people all around the world. But for somebody who is quite unique, trying his or her best to show something different, in the same field, people are not as supportive as they're supposed to be.
That's a many layered question. I think it partially depends on the artists, and partially on the consumers. I think right now for all artists, I mean, obviously this is a terrible time for all of us. That goes without saying. But sometimes, well, okay, where to start with this? First of all, terrible time. I think so many musicians and artists of all levels have just flocked to social media. And so there's just so much content out there. There's like this crazy content storm. And as we love and hate with the internet, there's no quality control on that.
Yes.
None whatsoever. Whereas for a live show, you know, there is quality control. There's a producer that's curating things. There's a presenter that's curating things. There's a venue that's sort of deciding what kind of bands they're going to book and what shows they're going to do. And there's also consumer control over that, because the people that aren't doing well don't sell tickets. But this doesn't happen online. And so there's just so much out there right now. And I think a lot of artists that are maybe a little bit more reflective feel very lost in the sort of content storm, I would call it, for lack of a better term. I know I certainly do. I often pick up my phone, look at social media, see 3 things, and I'm like, just throw this away. I'm not, you know, I don't even have interest. That doesn't inspire me, and then end up don't creating things. So that's part of it. I think that's one factor. I also think some of it depends on the actual artists. I think a lot of artists I really admire who are particularly skilled at their craft maybe have been slower to adapt to new technologies, which is a whole nother factor. I mean, we are, you know yourself, we are upskilling all the time in tech, and like getting comfortable doing things like this is really hard and really unusual. So I think you see a lot of great artists that sort of either decide they don't want to spend their time doing that, or there's even this weird thought, and I will call out my own community of classical musicians, in that somehow engaging in this is sort of beneath them. So I think that kind of cuts out a whole pool of quality people that think, you know, using this kind of tools for marketing, engaging with this, even just being on social media sometimes can be thought of as unartistic for some reason. Whereas in other communities, that's not the case. So yeah, part of that on the artists, I think, falls there. And then obviously there's the whole consumer thing of, you know, social media is such a strange platform that sometimes things that are really good are not always the most watchable on Instagram or on Facebook. And sometimes things that are kind of like cringeworthy get shared because they are that. And it's a very strange sort of content world. And yeah, I would put it on all of those 3 different things, that everyone is sort of floating around trying to figure out what's going on in this. And I haven't met any consumer yet that's not willing to support artists that they know about. I feel like everyone's been so generous, but perhaps some of the quieter artists are not being as vocal about what they need right now, because there may be more in their art, or they think it's beneath them, or I don't know. There's so many reasons there. So that was a very long diatribe. I'm sorry about that.
No. That's very much like what I think. And on the other hand, which can be kind of related to this question, the producers and sponsors, they can sometimes be unfortunately like have a negative gear on audience also, like, and the artist don't have much choice, you know what I mean, because the artist wants to show her or his talents, but the producer and sponsors, because they come up with lots of money and they're just, you know, want to get as many as audience, that can be also challenging. Am I right?
Yeah, it could be very controlling. I think that can go either way right now. You know, some people are feeling stifled by that because there's too much control. You know, maybe certain producers have deals with certain brands, and so that artist can only work with that brand, or, you know, it can be limiting. But it can also be beneficial too if those, it goes either way. You know, if, obviously it depends on what your producer and your company is like and what they're interested in, and how they're supporting you right now or not.
Okay. All right. So let's do something, Kiana. And I love to
Okay.
you, Kiana. So, and let's play. Let's play. Let's you play something that it really makes you happy and something that you want to play. It's
Okay.
all
Great. So I'll start with this was not the plan for today, but here in Ireland, it's very rainy and moody and just kind of one of those cozy, that's why I'm wearing my cozy sweater today, cozy sweater days.
right.
So I thought I might play for everyone. This is actually a tune that I learned here. It's a very local, not very well known Irish tune by a local fiddler that actually recently passed away. And this is called Paddy Fahy's Jig. So it's kind of, it's a jig, but it's not going to be a jig like you think. It's kind of like slow, and you're going to want to get a cup of coffee and get kind of snuggly. All right. I just always have to adjust here. Okay. Trying to stay in the frame with the violin is a challenge. Here we go.
Woo! Well
That is a
done.
snuggly one. Thank you.
I loved it. I loved it. It was quite Irish. Am I right?
Yes, yeah, that's a very, so I'm on the west coast of Ireland right now. That's a very local, traditional Irish tune.
Amazing, amazing. So, do you want to play something else? Probably something very different.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me think for a second. So this is more from American tradition, and it actually comes from bluegrass. But this would fall into almost that newgrass category that we talked about. It comes from bluegrass, uses some new techniques that have kind of come from classical music into the tradition of folk, which is called chopping. It's kind of a percussive, like rhythmic thing that fiddle players have started doing, which I am obsessed with. And yeah, this tune's called June Apple as well, which I like because of my namesake. So it's one that I play quite a lot, but you'll notice it has much more of that American bluegrass feel to it. Still very much in the fiddle tradition and just a catchy tune. So I'm going to start off with a little chopping section for you.
Well done, well done. Oh my
thank you.
God. Thank you so much. It was amazing. I loved it. Wow.
Thanks.
You played so fast. Oh my God.
I'm just having coffee here, so that's probably why.
That's all right. It's a very heavy raining here outside. I don't know if you can hear it. It's just...
Oh,
Still, that's all right. So one of the things that has happened from... Okay, this is something that I've seen myself and I've experienced, not as parents. I'm not married, not parents. So, but as an interpreter, because my other job is working, at different courts. I work in federal police as an interpreter, and also I work with schools a lot here in Australia and parents. One of the things that has been seen a lot, or from the parents in recent years, is their instance on sending their children to music classes and forcing them to become musicians. They believe that children at that age are not able to identify their talents, and in the future they will be appreciated or like their pressure, which I completely disagree with that. So, but your opinion as a professional musician is matter. Tell me about that. You know what I'm exactly talking about. Like,
yeah, that's a great question. I've been asked this many times, and it is tough to answer because, I know every parent wants to do the best thing for their child possible, and there's a lot of research that says getting your kid involved in music is really good for their brain. I do agree with that. I think that that's a great thing to get your kid involved with music somehow. That does not mean that they're going to become a professional musician, and that's okay. I think that the benefits of learning music are huge. There's so many, socio-emotional elements. You learn how to communicate. You learn how to engage with your peers. You learn how to work hard and practice something and teach yourself things as well. But the pressure that's placed on kids right now, I think, is insane. And I honestly, as a professional musician, I have seen so many very, very talented performers who were forced into it at a young age, and they burn out by 25. I just think and so many of them have been pushed into, they've put in hours and hours against their will and end up completely burnt out, even though they're very technically talented. But I think, for example, in my own situation, yes, I had a parent that encouraged me to take piano lessons when I was younger. Mm-hmm. It was never forced, and I didn't have to play. And I think that actually created a lifelong love of what I was doing. That the motivation came from me was really important. And I have seen with, like I said, a number of friends, even people I studied with in university that were extremely talented, that after that much pressure, it's hard to even know if that was your passion to begin with. It's just something that you happen to be good at by that point. And I don't think that music is a hard enough career as it is. And if you don't love it, it's not going to work. Yeah. You have to really want it for yourself. Yeah. So I would encourage parents to give their kids, musical opportunities, whether it's after school, musical groups, or even just schools, I think school music programs are hugely important. That gives kids a way to engage in it. And if they love it, yes, there's great resources for private teachers, for after school classes. Even now, you know, we have all these virtual opportunities. I'm teaching students all over the world right now, which is amazing. But there has to be some intrinsic motivation there. And I think the minute that you force that, it completely changes the kid's relationship with music. Completely.
Absolutely. I agree. And yeah. Kiana, I have no more questions. It was amazing conversation with you, and I'm so glad we eventually made it. And it's been my privilege having you here on my show. And before I'm gonna wrap it up, so do you want to say something, or do you have something to say? And I didn't ask you probably.
No, thank you so much for having me. This is just a wonderful opportunity, and I'm so inspired by all of the work that you're doing. And yeah, connecting with artists and amazing people from all over the world is exactly what we need right now. So thank you, and thank you for having me on. This is a pleasure to get to chat with you.
You're welcome, and hopefully to meet you one day in reality, Kiana June.
I hope so, yes, in real life, as we say now.
Exactly. You take care, look after yourself. I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Bye.